Space, the final frontier of mankind. I think it's fair to say that we've been fascinated since our earliest days as a species by what lies beyond in the vastness of space where our tiny planet floats. Born out of this curiosity is humanity's desire to validate that we are not alone in this universe. I believe that it's therefore only natural that this would translate to the media we consume as well. And so, sci-fi films featuring aliens or extraterrestrials were created, and naturally, the subgenre that dealt with the horror side of it followed right alongside it. One of the things that defines us humans is our curiosity, and in today's video, I'm going to be exploring scenes that lean into this morbid fascination of ours with regard to the unknown monsters that we encounter in these films. Not all of the scenes in this video will be out-and-out autopsy scenes, but will also feature these creatures in scenarios with a scientific temperament as well. So join me today as I dissect 10 of the creepiest alien autopsy scenes in movie history. Let's begin. The Thing, 1982. I think that most people would agree that John Carpenter's cult horror flick The Thing, based on the novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr., might just be the greatest sci-fi horror movie ever made. The movie explores the deadly encounter of an American research team in the Antarctic as they stumble upon a malevolent alien life form that can threaten the entire world if left unchecked. While I can choose from several gruesome body horror scenes in the film for the purpose of our video today, I'm going to be exploring the scene in which Dr. Blair, played by Wilford Brimley, is performing an autopsy on the alien that they had just incinerated after it had attempted to assimilate the sled dogs in the kennel. Despite the nonchalance with which Blair is pointing out the various details of the alien to the rest of his crew, I remember visibly recoiling at the disgusting sight of the mutilated and malformed corpse on the screen. You see, the alien in The Thing starts assimilating the organism it devours, slowly changing its own cellular structure until it's the perfect copy of said organism. However, let me tell you, the movie really leans into the whole changing on the cellular structure bit, as shown in the autopsy scene where the dead creature being observed is midway towards transforming into a dog. This movie is quite clearly not for the squeamish, which makes me wonder how I even managed to watch it as a kid. Throughout the film, we never really get to see what the alien's true form looks like, and it's this fear of the unknown that drives the narrative of the movie. The alien could be anyone, which creates a perfect blend of psychological and body horror, the likes of which has not really been replicated by any film since, in my opinion. I think you can see why this film has made it onto our list today.
But we've already sustained heavy losses.
I spoke with the Joint Chiefs when they arrived at NORAD.
Independence Day, 1996. I know what some of you are already thinking. Independence Day isn't a horror flick, and I do agree with you. However, let me explain why this summer blockbuster from '96, which was a film that you would ordinarily take your kids out to watch, makes it onto this list. The entire premise of the Independence Day film is about humanity or America's last stand against a deadly alien invasion of psychic aliens. However, when one of these aliens is captured, after it happens to get on Will Smith's bad side, it's taken to Area 51 to be studied. And by studied, I mean dissected. In a rare moment of body horror in the film, we get to watch as a team of doctors attempt to clumsily open up the captured alien while getting spooked comically at every turn. However, no amount of their antics really reduce the sheer disgusting sights that follow, as they slice open the alien's skull with a scalpel, only for it to burst open to reveal that it was some sort of an exosuit. As they then further slice into the thin, slimy membrane and fish into the gooey interiors, they discover the real alien within it. The sight is pure barf-inducing, and is saved by the sheer fact that it's quite short, as the alien awakens and begins destroying the lab and the scientists. I think the entire scene might have felt even more disgusting than usual because of the surprise factor of it being included in a film where most people didn't expect it to be. Men in Black, 1997. So you didn't think I'd do any sort of alien-related video without mentioning Men in Black even once, did you? Well, the 1997 Men in Black film has to be one of the most popular sci-fi films featuring aliens of all time, and it has its fair share of really unique aliens which range from the hilarious to the creepy. For the purpose of this video though, I'll be focusing on the autopsy scene involving the Arquillian alien in the morgue. As J and K investigate what looks like an ordinary human corpse, the person's face gets sort of carved out to reveal that the body was a vessel for another alien that was also dying within. While I admit it might not have the same amount of gore and body horror of something like The Thing, considering the fact a lot of children were watching these movies, I feel like it was pretty morbid of them to include this scene. It's a little horrifying to think that this human body was serving as a vessel for the Archillian and now was also his coffin. Men in Black has some amazing visual effects, which were a result of a combination of CGI and practical effects, and it shines through particularly well in this scene. Alien, 1979. You can't even spell Alien without talking about the original movie Alien from 1979, and with this entry, I'm turning our attention back to the realm of horror once again. The Alien franchise has a lot of gruesome body horror in it, but most of it involves the xenomorphs laying waste to every human they set sights on. So I thought, going by the topic of our video, let me talk about one of the rarer instances in which it is the humans who are doing the dissecting, instead of the other way around. In the first half of the original film from 1979, after the facehugger dies when it infects Thomas Kane, the villainous synthetic Ash, who's on a secret mission to deliver the xenomorphs to Weyland-Yutani Corporation for study and use in the bioweapons division, decides to dissect the creature. Personally, watching the facehugger was oddly satisfying to me, considering all the havoc it caused across the Alien franchise, but it was still pretty gross, just like most things involving their species. As Ash dissects and probes the lump of flesh, he discovers that the creature can replace its damaged cells with polarized silicon, granting it resistance against all manner of hazardous environments. While this might be a fascinating detail, for Alien fans, the scene itself is just creepy and gross, making it, I feel, rank easily among others like it involving alien autopsies in cinema. Battle Los Angeles, 2011. From the vacuum of space to good old Earth, my next entry is from the 2011 action sci-fi film Battle Los Angeles, which involves an alien race invading Earth for our water. I mean, they could have just asked politely, but that wouldn't make for much of a movie. So instead, they started slaughtering every human they see indiscriminately. Now it's time for a bunch of Marines to save the citizens of Los Angeles and take down these seemingly indestructible invaders. The scene that I'm going to be talking about is the one in which the soldiers have finally managed to take down one of the aliens and are dragging him through a building in the hopes of finding a weakness. With the aid of a vet, they soon begin dissecting the alien in what I can only describe as being totally revolting. Not just because they're cutting this thing open, but also because it's very much alive while they're doing it. They literally claw and hack through his body, trying to find a weakness they can exploit. What really sells this scene is the desperation of the soldiers, because they're fighting a losing battle, with the enemy inching ever closer to their position, and this autopsy might just be their only shot. This film is definitely more Black Hawk Down than Mars Attacks, but I found this scene pretty hard to watch, so it makes it onto this list. The Thing, 2011. Just when you thought I was done talking about body-snatching aliens, here's The Thing. I couldn't ignore this 2011 movie for this list. The Thing from 2011 is actually the prequel to the cult classic that I discussed right at the beginning of the video, and therefore tells the story of the Scandinavian research crew whose remains the crew from the first film come across right at the start. I don't think I need to explain what the alien in this movie does, but yeah, basically this thing has infected one of the members of the research team, as it seems fond of doing. And what do you know? We get another absolutely repulsive autopsy scene, just like in the original. The prequel does try to recreate a lot of things from the original, but this one wasn't on my bingo card when I started watching the film. Let's face it, the autopsy scene is pretty famous from the 1982 film, but I didn't know it could be topped, and yet there I was, eyes glued to the screen, while my stomach turned at what was transpiring. So in this film, one of the crew members, called Henrik, gets infected by the Thing. Thankfully, he gets torched before he can be fully assimilated. As the crew stands around to figure out what they're really up against, Dr. Sander Halvorsen, played by Ulrich Thompson, begins the operation as he cuts through the charred remains of the creature. What they discover inside is an amniotic sac that has an eerily human shape to it. While the rest of the group continues to watch in horror, Halvorsen cuts through the sac only to reveal a half-formed visage of Henrik embodied in it. I think it's not a hot take to say that this scene is probably more harrowing than the autopsy from the first film. Yes, that did have the legacy and the shock factor behind it, but the one from the prequel feels more visceral and deliberate, as the film leans heavily into it knowing full well how well the older film did it. This is one of the better prequels for a film to have come out in recent memory, and if you're a fan of the original, I believe there is no reason why you wouldn't love this one as well. District 9, 2009. The 2009 flick District 9 is one of the best sci-fi films to have come out this turn of the century, and I say this without a shred of doubt. The film is an absolute masterpiece, as it goes beyond the scope of your average alien film due to its dealing with much more complex themes like apartheid, commodification of people, and the utter dehumanization caused by it. The plot of the film, for those who haven't seen it yet, revolves around a colony of aliens nicknamed the Prawns, who have been living in ghettos in the city of Johannesburg in South Africa after their ship is stranded on Earth, floating over the city. Wikus van der Merwe, played by Sharlto Copley, is an officer who works for a shady corporation called the Multinational United, which deals primarily in firearms and reverse engineering of the alien technology. This corporation effectively is in cahoots with the government, which has been actively responsible for oppressing the prawns and using them for experiments. The entire thing kicks off when Wikus enters District 9 to forcefully evict its alien population, when he's sprayed in the face with a canister full of some unknown fluid. Following this, he begins to slowly metamorph into a prawn himself, starting with his arms. The harrowing scene that I'm going to be talking about in this video involves him being captured by his former employees as they put him through cruel experiments to test alien weapons which only respond to alien DNA by torturing him. The scene is frankly super disturbing in my opinion, as he's utterly humiliated and tortured as if he's a mere commodity. I think the most shocking scene was where the lead scientist, along with the MNU and the government's top brass, are discussing about harvesting his organs right in front of him while he's fully conscious. They talk about him as if he's not even human, let alone alive, giving a glance into the sheer depravity of humans driven by greed and lust for power. I think it's fair to say that while this might not be an out-and-out autopsy scene, it is one of the best examples of medical exploitation represented in a film. Though, like I said, the themes go much deeper and darker than just that. Prometheus, 2012. Ridley Scott returned nearly 33 years later to the franchise, where he introduced the world to the terrifying xenomorphs. Prometheus from 2012 serves as a prequel to the Alien films, taking place in the year 2093, some 30 years before the events of the first film. Well, this time around, the humans have finally made their way to an alien world called LV-223, where they discover the ruins of an ancient structure that they believe to have belonged to the progenitors of the human race called engineers. Basically, one thing leads to another, and one of the archaeologists, Charles Holloway, is infected by the synthetic David, who spikes his drink with a mysterious black goo that they find on the planet. Following this, Holloway and his partner Elizabeth Shaw proceed to make love before things go south quickly as they encounter the last remaining hostile engineer and another member of their crew that has been mutated due to the goo. Holloway himself dies after he begins to sense something is growing within him, but the true horror emerges when they discover that Shaw, who is infertile, is now in an advanced stage of pregnancy. I think what makes this concept even more creepy is the fact that it's such a departure from the usual ways in which the xenomorphs are conceived. In my opinion, it's almost a desecration of the entire birth-giving process, which is considered holy and divine by humans. The scene that I'm talking about is one in which now a completely terrified and agitated Shaw rushes to the medibay to operate and remove whatever horrifying thing that she has nursing in her belly. The scene is absolutely revolting as she cuts her belly open using the technology there, and something inhuman crawls out of her body. This time around, once again, while it might not have been an autopsy scene, the entire surgical process involved hit too close to home for this video to ignore it. If Shaw had been late by even a few minutes, it might as well have been an autopsy, and that's what's absolutely terrifying about this scene, along with the obvious blood and gore. Life, 2017. One of the more recent alien flicks that scratches the itch for me with regards to this genre is the 2017 film Life. The premise of Life is simple, as it follows a group of astronauts aboard the International Space Station who discover a single-celled organism within a soil sample from Mars. They nickname this creature Calvin, but believe me, as harmless as that name may sound, this creature soon turns out to be more than anything that they bargained for. I think what made this movie really scary was the fact that as they experiment on the creature, they soon realize that this thing is studying them as much as they are studying it. It soon begins to grow and threaten everyone in the space station. One scene in particular, when a crew member is trying to make Calvin come in contact with a rat for an experiment, is particularly harrowing, as the organism latches onto the man's hand and begins pulling him through the tiny containment box. I also feel that the oppressive nature of its setting, which is essentially a compressed box floating in vast empty space, makes the film feel even more claustrophobic and scary. I'd recommend this film to anyone who's a fan of these types of films and hasn't quite been satisfied with the things we've been offered lately. The Faculty, 1998. 1998 saw director Robert Rodriguez, who has given us films like Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn, and Alita Battle Angel, unite with writer Kevin Williamson of Scream and Vampire Diaries fame to give us what would eventually become a cult classic called The Faculty. The film also has a pretty stellar cast of actors, most of whom were not nearly as famous as they would eventually become, like Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett, Salma Hayek, and even the R&B singer Usher. The scene I'm talking about is the one in which Casey, which is Wood's character, discovers a strange creature on a football field. They take it to their science teacher to examine it. While they put the tiny alien under the microscope and attempt to study the thing, Usher accidentally pours water on it and the creature responds. They soon realize that the creature is dependent on water, and their teacher drops it into a fish tank. And no sooner has he done that than it seems to grow rapidly, even dividing itself in two. The entire moment is bizarre and tense as Jon Stewart, yes, the same Jon Stewart from The Daily Show, who plays the role of Professor Furlong, reaches into the tank to pick up the creature. I feel that the movie does a stellar job in building the tension in this moment, as everybody waits with bated breath to see what happens next. Predictably, the creature sprouts teeth and bites into his finger, leaving it bloodified. What makes the whole thing absolutely filled with tension and dread, in my opinion, is the fact that this alien doesn't really look monstrous, which lowers the audience's guard to what it's capable of. I also feel that in using a cast of teenagers instead of veteran scientists and astronauts who know what they're doing, the movie puts the onus on a bunch of kids to figure things out. I'm gonna conclude by saying that in a sci-fi alien flick, the tension and the horror comes from various directions, be it jump scares or fear of the unknown. However, one of the most underrated aspects of such films in which they deliver terror are scenes like the ones that I've explored in today's video. Which one of these scenes was your favorite from today's list? Let me know in the comments below. For now though, it's time for me to say goodbye. I hope to see you soon in the next one. Until then, stay safe and stay marvelous.